From popular and sprawling university campuses whose grounds are supposedly roamed by ghosts of former faculty and students, to classic historic hotels where the spirits of guests who never really checked out lurk after dark. Are you sure you're ready to brave our picks for some of the most haunted places in South Dakota? Number 5. The Washington Pavilion of Arts and Science. The Washington Pavilion of Arts and Science, which is located off of South Main Avenue out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, is a popular historical and cultural venue acting as one of the few facilities purposed in bringing together performing and visual arts with interactive sciences and educational opportunities. Historically, from 1904 to 1908, the structure now holding the pavilion was initially constructed as Washington High School, after which the student populace would quickly outgrow the site's capacity, and in 1922, a new south wing was added. In 1932, the north wing would be remodeled, and in 1935, a new center unit to the school was completed, while the original central school was demolished to make way for a west wing which was constructed atop its foundations. In 1986, this aged property would be honored on the National Register of Historic Places. In 1992, some of the school's final classes would be held, and from 1993 to 1999, a slew of restorations, remodels, and modernizations were launched, after which, later in 99, the site was reopened as the Washington Pavilion of Arts and Science, and would accommodate around 350,000 visitors over its first year of operation alone. The Washington Pavilion remains open into the present, offering gallery space, a concert hall, a large format theater, a science museum, and much, much more. Oh, and for those interested in spending some quality time within the pavilion, nearly all of its spaces are available to rent for gatherings, functions, weddings, and the like. Over its lengthy existence, first amongst its generations of students and teachers, and more recently amongst pavilion staff, this aged property has been shrouded by a range of local legends and ghost stories, with many braving its bounds, telling of disembodied voices and footsteps heard through the halls and from vacant rooms, of extreme cold spots and adverse weather, and of the unnerving feelings of being watched, of being followed, or even of being brushed up against by a crowd unseen. The small, spectral form of an unidentified child has been spied wandering the 4th floor, while within what formerly acted as library space, a phantom librarian has been sighted seemingly going about tasks from a life that, based off of her attire, was lived out long ago. Lastly, possibly the most famous story surrounding the pavilion tells that years back, a maintenance worker fell down an elevator shaft to his death during one of the building's many renovations, leaving his spirit to linger in the shaft where his body perished. To date, this elevator has been known to act on its own accord, and even following countless inspections, no cause to these abnormalities has ever been uncovered. Number 4. The Historic Bullock Hotel. The historic Bullock Hotel, which is located off of the corner of Wall and Main Streets out of Deadwood, South Dakota, is a renowned lodging boasting the titles of being the oldest hotel in the whole of its weathered town, as well as of being one of the most photographed buildings in the region. Historically, from 1894 to 1896, the Bullock was constructed under early Deadwood Sheriff Seth Bullock alongside his business partner Solomon Starr, and right atop the foundations of their former warehouse, which had just burned to the ground in the 1894 Deadwood fire. In 1900, a small building adjoining the hotel to the south was acquired under Bullock, who transformed it into the Gentleman's Bar. Following Starr and Bullock's passings in 1917 and 1919 respectively, the hotel would go through a number of owners and would serve a variety of purposes, and in 1976, the property was sold to the Arias family, who converted the whole of the site into a hardware store. More recently, in 1991, the expanse was sold to Bullock Properties, who would reconvert the space back into a hotel, during which time it was meticulously restored to fit its original appearance, and would also welcome a range of modernizations and renovations. The historic Bullock Hotel remains in operation to this day, offering a casino, a restaurant, 28 guest rooms, and touring options of both the historic and paranormal varieties. Rather classically, this aged establishment is rumored to be haunted by the spirits of the many who cherished its bounds and lives since spent, as well as of those who perished near, and those frequenting the Bullock have reported instances of showers or sinks turning on and off by themselves, encounters with shadowy manifestations, and the unnerving feelings of being watched, of being followed, or of being touched by someone or something unseen. In dining and drink areas, plates and glasses have been known to shake or fly across surfaces. Electronic malfunctions are all but common, and extreme cold spots are felt through the heat of summer. Seth's cellar, which hosts a basement bar room, once acted as a makeshift smallpox ward, and the demesne is suspected to harbor the soul of a little girl by the name of Sarah, whose mother, it's believed, passed just before she herself succumbed to the horrible ailment. The ghost of Sarah has been known to cause mischief and play small pranks on the living, and in the past, when a piano was kept downstairs, guests often recounted watching it play on their own. Also reported across Bullet grounds are phantom whistles and instances in which guests hear their names being called by a bellowing male voice when no one else is around. Lastly, a tall spectral silhouette bearing a likeness to Seth Bullock himself has been sighted about, usually blending in amidst social events or lurking in the backgrounds of staff meetings, and many believe his soul is lingering to keep an eye over his beloved business. Number 3. Ellsworth Air Force Base. Ellsworth Air Force Base, which is located around 10 miles to the northeast of Rapid City and just to the north of Box Elder in South Dakota, is a prominent military point hosting the 28th Bomb Wing, which is actually one of only 2 total of the Air Force's B-1B Lancer wings. Notably, the B-1B strategic bomber is recognized as the craft with the highest payload, fastest maximum speed, and lowest per-hour flight cost out of any other craft in the U.S. bomber fleet. Historically, through January of 1942, Ellsworth AFB was established as the Rapid City Army Air Base, with its control tower opening on September 30th of the same year. By October, a range of AFB runways, quarters, offices, and facilities were constructed, and through 1942, no less than 5 hangars were completed on site. In 1953, and following his death during a training flight earlier the same year, the old Army Air Base would be re-established in honor of Brigadier General Richard E. Ellsworth as Ellsworth AFB, and notably, starting in 1960, the site would act as host to the newly fielded Titan I intercontinental ballistic missiles. Through the Cold War, Ellsworth's position as a first strike defense would keep it on a constant high alert. Through the mid-1980s, the site would welcome a range of upgrades and modernizations. Following the Cold War, and as its necessity was rapidly diminished, operations at Ellsworth would slow significantly, and through September of 1991, the AFB's always-ready missile units were ordered to stand down, after which silo systems were deactivated and ballistics removed. Through the 2000s, new national strategic requirements would result in additional mission realignment, and while Ellsworth remains active into the present, it also lends itself to the public, with touring options of the base available seasonally from May through September. Strangely, in an environment offering limited space for what-ifs or possible fictions, Ellsworth has seemingly always been shrouded in stories of supernatural encounters, and those who have frequented its bounds have reported phantom footsteps and disembodied voices, extreme cold spots felt even through the heat of summer, and terrifying encounters with a brown-eyed specter that's been known to stalk women at great lengths, and that's even inappropriately touched several of his targets. The AFB's antenna building is rumored to harbor multiple presences, and within, many have told of objects sighted moving on their own, of appliances found unplugged or adversely on and operating by themselves, and of frequent malfunctions in personal electronics. Possibly the most famous Ellsworth legend tells of a helicopter pilot who was killed through the 1980s, and whose spirit has been encountered within the control room of the missile silo right near his crash site. Those who near this room often describe an eerie, old-fashioned radio heard playing music from within that promptly shuts off when they enter. Number 2. South Dakota State University. South Dakota State University, whose main campus is based out of Brookings, South Dakota, is a prominent public land-grant research institution that boasts the titles of being the largest, most comprehensive, and oldest continuously operating university in the whole of its state. Historically, SDSU's roots can be traced back to the Dakota Agriculture College, which was founded on February 21st of 1881 within the Dakota Territory, and its first building, which was constructed in 1883, was actually funded directly under the territorial legislature. Through the late 19th century, the school would welcome a range of modernizations and expansions. In 1904, the site would re-establish itself as the South Dakota State College of Agriculture and Mechanic Arts. In 1956, a nursing program would be introduced for the first time, and in 1957, a grad school was formalized and offered. In 1964, the college's status would be elevated, and incidentally, it would undergo one final name change to reflect said elevation, being to that of South Dakota State University. In 1999, an honors college was formed, and more recently, in 2017, the colleges which comprise the whole of the university were revised, with some renamed entirely. SDSU remains open into the present, accommodating an enrollment of around 11,000, while offering options in associates, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees across 175 separate fields of study. Over its lengthy existence, an impressive assortment of campus legends passed down through generations of staff and alumni, coupled with a mess of first-hand accounts, have resulted in this aged place of learning being surrounded in a wealth of ghost stories, and those braving its bounds have told of extreme cold spots felt in adverse weather or within sealed and temperature-controlled rooms, of objects sighted moving on their own, and of shadowy figures that stalk lone walkers after dark. Within the Lincoln Music Hall, chairs and boxes have been witnessed sliding across entire rooms, lights flicker without cause, and an ominous figure in a black trench coat has been sighted lurking in the basement. Within West Hall, which was constructed in 1907 and was actually utilized as the Brookings Hospital and Morgue until 1964, before its repurposing as a residence hall, which it would serve as until '69, visitors have told of disembodied footsteps that emanate from vacant rooms or halls, and the constant feelings of being watched, of being followed, or even of being brushed up against by a presence unseen. Lastly, Donor Auditorium is rumored to play host to a spirit called George, who, as legend has it, was a janitor that fell to his death from an organ alcove on site in 1919. In the years following his passing, many began reporting instances in which they heard the organ playing itself, and to date, George has been blamed for phantom banging noises, for intentionally misplacing others' personal possessions, and has even been known to photobomb random selfies and other shoots. Number 1. The Mount Moriah Cemetery. The Mount Moriah Cemetery, which is located off of Mount Moriah Drive out of Deadwood, South Dakota, is a historic burying grounds notable as the final resting place of such legends as Wild Bill Hickok, Calamity Jane, the aforementioned Seth Bullock, and other significant figures of the Wild West. Historically, through the early 1870s, the settlement of Deadwood would be illegally established on lands that were actually granted to the Lakota through the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie. However, following the 1874 discovery of gold through the area, which was made by Colonel George Armstrong Custer, miners and settlers in search of their fortunes would flock in droves to the region, and by 1875, Deadwood's population would be documented at around 12,000, though some experts speculate it was likely closer to 25,000. The town's first burying grounds, being the Ingleside Cemetery, were established early and filled quickly, and in 1878, additional lands were purchased for the purpose of Mount Moriah Cemetery, after which a number of burials at Ingleside were actually reinterred in this new yard. By the 1890s, the Deadwood Cemetery Association was established under citizens concerned for the expanse's care and preservation. In 1892, Lawrence County would deed the whole of Mount Moriah grounds to the association. In 1938, the association in turn would deed this yard to the city of Deadwood, and by 1949, all local plots had been sold, after which, over the years, Mount Moriah has welcomed a slew of restorations alongside the addition of special markers for significant historical figures. In the present, a visitor center that sits just adjacent to Mount Moriah offers guests a chance to explore the histories of both the yard and of the town as a whole. Self-guided touring options are available, and notably, while all of its plots have been sold, the grounds do continue to accommodate occasional end-of-life services, so if you're thinking of checking this one out, remember to be respectful. Chillingly, Mount Moriah grounds are rumored to harbor countless ghostly presences tied to their many interments, and those braving this weathered old place of eternal rest have reported extreme cold spots felt in adverse weather, mysterious voices that float on the winds, and disembodied footsteps and other phantom commotions that seemingly follow the living around at great lengths. Several have described the constant feelings of being watched, of being followed, or even of being touched or tapped on the shoulder by a presence unseen, while orbs and strange shadowy silhouettes have been captured both in photography and video. Tragically, one section of Mount Moriah harbors the remains of many children who perished near through various epidemics, accidents, and the like. This particular area is rumored to harbor some of the yard's most active phenomena, and those nearing it have reported creepy little giggles, crying, and the pitter-patter of small feet heard emanating from around markers, occurrences that are made all the more disturbing after dark. Lastly, some of the most famous reports surrounding this weathered cemetery tell of run-ins with the entities of some of its most cherished Wild West legends, and many claim you really can't set foot on the property without feeling their presence all around. Taking its fascinating history into account and coupling it with such a bone-chilling range of associated ghost stories and purported encounters with the supernatural, we felt the Mount Moriah Cemetery was an easy final choice as our pick for the most haunted place in South Dakota. Thanks for joining us for our list of picks for some of the most haunted places in South Dakota. If you enjoyed hearing our histories and ghost stories, subscribe to our channel, like this upload, and share us with anyone you feel could use a good scare. We'll catch you all next time.